There's Koach Iris for a beautiful job with the Torah services this morning and the Torah reading, and Kristen and Barbara as well for beautiful jobs with our Torah reading. And thank you to Dove for reminding us of the new month that's coming. And if we had services in the morning, you would hear shofar blasts also to remind us that there are only, as Dove said, 30 shopping days or so till Rosh Hashanah. There are some Torah readings and pieces of our Torah, not Torah readings, but pieces of our Torah that we need to remember so that we can forget. Think about it. That's what we do on Purim. We remember Haman. We listen carefully so we can forget Haman. Because Haman represents that which is negative in our lives, that which is negative and evil in the world, and we want to wipe out its memory because we need to make a better world and we need to cleanse ourselves and remove that evil from ourselves. So the reading that we had this morning that I called to mind during my introduction, thinking about how we deal with the holy places of other nations, is just one such a text. And there are others that I'm sure people can call to mind that we need to remember so that we can forget. We need to remember them. We need to know they're there. We need to think about their significance, and especially we need to think about their danger. And then we need to forget them, meaning these are not things that we should carry out. These are not things that we should observe, because they're ways to destroy communities. They're ways to destroy humanity, not ways to build a world guided by God. So when we come to a place and we see a church, a mosque, a gurdwara, we shouldn't think at first thought, we should destroy that. But instead, we should think about how we can live in peace with our neighbors, how we can build strong communities. And if you think about it over history, these texts need to be there to remind us of the dangers of what we can do. But we also need to teach strongly how we really should react and what we really should think, because they're extremely dangerous texts. Think about the text we just read and how it's been carried out over history. We think of the destructions of peoples in antiquity because of race or religion. We think of the Inquisition, where we were persecuted and Muslims were persecuted from just this kind of text. Because we were different, we weren't the religion of the majority, and therefore our synagogues and mosques should be torn down. And even in modern times, we can see in India how Hindu and Muslim attack each other's holy places. They don't use our text, but they use texts that are similar, and allows them to justify from God the possibility that we should be destroying these places, that we shouldn't be listening and learning from each other. Rather, we should sit in our mutual hostility rather than trying to build a world built on peace. Think of Baruch Goldstein in our own community and what he did when he heard just such a text from the book of Esther. And more modern times as well, as mosques are destroyed and attacked, and also how non-Orthodox synagogues in Israel are attacked. We need to think about how we can build a better world, a world based on love and respect, and we need to look at our own soul and see our own responsibilities, even in modern times. And I think about this because Shelley and I, when we went to Japan, and way before that as well, enjoyed visiting other people's holy sites, going into temples, shrines, gurdwaras, mosques, to learn about and experience other people's experience of God. And I've written extensively about it on my blog, and especially when I was in Tokyo, it was something I talked about. There was hardly a Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur where I didn't think about experiences in Japan to try to enlighten the people who were there, mostly tourists, a lot of tourists that came on the holy days, but also to think about the world we live in and how we need to learn from each other as we celebrate Rosh Hashanah more meaningfully, as we celebrate Shabbat more meaningfully, as we approach and learn about God more meaningfully. We need to be open to many, many different searches, many, many different journeys, if we're to grow and create a world where we can understand the divine. I remember a science fiction story that I read a million years ago. Well, it feels that way. When I was a kid. And the science fiction story was about a group of lamas, pardon me, somewhere in Tibet, and they were searching for the 10 million names of God. And finally, a supercomputer, and think about this, this was 50 years ago or 60 years ago, they were thinking about supercomputers, probably it would fill up this whole room, or maybe 10 of these rooms, but this supercomputer of giant size was brought to Tibet, and it punched out all the 10 million names of God. The end of the story isn't so nice. The lights went out once all the names were discovered. But, be that as it may, it calls to mind the Sufi idea that there are 1,000 names of God. And the Sufi understood that some of the names were Brahma, Krishna. They understood that it was broader, just the names that we use for God, but that there are many searches for God, and we need to find and identify all of those names if we're to be enriched, if we're really to appreciate the divine. It reminds me of the mysticism of Abraham Abulafia, who said that every word in every language was a name of God. He also said, by the way, that if you take the whole Torah, it also is just one giant name of God. Now, let's try to pronounce that. But there are all these names of God, and Abulafia, writing 1,000 years ago, didn't limit it to the Lashon HaKodesh. He didn't limit it to just Hebrew. He said that every name in every language was a name of God. That's a rather profound statement and would be revolutionary even today. But it's a really telling statement. It reminds us that God is found everywhere and is indescribable beyond any word or any single language. And when maybe we take it all together, maybe then we can find the name of God. When we take them all and pronounce them in one long syllable, maybe then we can find the name of God. Now, I was thinking about this because I remember once on the High Holy Days, I had given a sermon talking about a Mitzori, a festival that we had gone to just that day. People thought I was crazy. It was Erev Yom Kippur. We went to Kamakura. There was a festival going on. I actually posted about it, and all my rabbinic colleagues said, "What are you doing going to Kamakura on Erev Yontif? You should be preparing. You should, And I said, I am preparing. But someone after the service said, "Rabbi, don't you remember that parsha from Re'eh? Don't you remember you're not supposed to be going to festivals? You're supposed to be tearing them down." That shows the danger of the texts, and it shows the danger of closing our minds as we try to learn and listen to people around us. We need to learn and listen and realize that people everywhere are in journeys seeking out God, seeking out an understanding of the divine. They may call it by different names. They may not understand it as a single being, or they may not understand it as a being at all, as the Buddhists do. But they are all looking to try to connect that which is ineffable, and we can learn from all of them. Just as the Sufis said, Brahma and Krishna are names of God. Just as religious Muslims were willing to open their minds, so too we need to open our minds and be willing to learn and listen. We can be enriched and we can reach towards that which is ineffable if we open our minds. Many years ago, when I was developing an interfaith program, we were having a discussion group, and we came upon what we thought was the best metaphor for God as we look at God, And it was a diamond with innumerable facets. And each community, each religion, and maybe each person had a single facet. And we all decided that our facet is the truth. And we missed the wonder of the entire diamond, which we could only appreciate if we listen to many people, if we open our eyes and hear many, many different voices. There's a Jain story about a king who takes a group of people who are blind, who are sight impaired, and he brings them before an elephant. And he asks them to describe what they see. And one person says, oh, it's a giant tree trunk. Another person says, oh, it's hard like rock, the ivory tusks. Another person said, oh, it's like a snake, as they felt the tail. And so each person found a different way to describe the elephant. And then they started arguing because they all thought we're the ones that are right. And ultimately, of course, the king explained to them that this was a beast and they were all describing but a part. And it's only when you can get to the whole that you can actually appreciate it. Now, I don't think we can ever understand the whole of God. I don't think that we're ever going to be able to put God into an image that we can express. And what I've often said, and I truly believe, is if anybody tells you that they know what God is, you should run away from that person as quickly as possible. Because they're not telling you about God, they're creating God in their own image. But then the person who I was talking to, I probably shared much of this. They said to me, well, Rabbi, why should I then be Jewish? And I said to him, each person has their particular journey and their particular insights and their particular truths. And these are important, and these help us to understand the divine. And if any one of those pieces is lost, then an essential piece of God is lost from the world. And our journey of ethical monotheism, our journey teaches important lessons about how we can understand God, how we can understand the divine. And it's our work sharing that message and living that message that allows that piece of God to shine in the world. And I think that's our mission. That's what it means to be a light unto the nations, to remember that we're sharing an essential piece of truth. We have and live an essential piece of truth. And if we vanish, then something essential, something that's needed by all, is lost from the world. So, if I were going to rewrite this Torah portion this morning, if I were to think about the idea of remembering and therefore forgetting, I would say, when you come into a community and you see a church, when you come into the community and see a gurdwara, a mosque, a Buddhist temple, a Hindu temple, don't run away, don't destroy them, don't try to ignore their presence, but instead listen and learn, and then all of us are enriched as we seek the divine. All of us are enriched as we try to create a world where we can live together in peace. Shabbat Shalom.